Добрый день еще раз, коллеги. Я еще раз представлюсь. Меня зовут Удовик Андрей.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'm Udovik Andrei. When I'm not a technical consultant, I normally had some project organizations. I mean, I've been dealing with this for 20 years, but that is not a typical, that is a standard organization. And the difference is that we have the design unit, where I have worked for 20 years as a specialist. There is also a unit for energy audit, and more than a half of the company stand now their project management unit. So that is a direct competitor for the support team. And I'm dealing with this function. I've worked with a lot of European projects, the World Bank, the EBRD, different projects. And over many years, I've seen that the project is implemented and the final product is okay and everybody has earned money. But in most cases, that is either the building which is built during a too long period of time or something happens to it. And the first lesson I've learned for myself is that there are some features of successful project, and one of them is availability of meetings, weekly meetings or meetings which are held twice a week. So it is 99% that such projects which have such meetings will be a success. If there are no such meetings, 99% chance that you will just have a scandal at the end. Then a second sign, second feature is availability of the project management team, which, of course, takes the activities, carries out the activities Maxim has mentioned. I would just like point out to you that at those weekly meetings, you don't have just to discuss the schedule. You need to discuss the challenges you have been faced with, the challenges which you used to have in the previous period, because you need to check whether somebody has corrected them. By somebody, I mean the people who have been entrusted with this task. If there is no permission for digging, let's say, you can do whatever you want from the contract with the contractor, but until you get the permission, the contractor will not start doing anything. So the schedule is not still the basis. The basis lies in the current challenges and problems. And also, as a result of attendance of such meetings, because I worked with majorly foreign groups of project management, and my first experience was some construction at the nuclear power station of the burial site, and I really learned a lot there. But the key element there was a very simple thing. I understood that we need to record the problem and to write what needs to be done to settle it, to solve it, and who and by what deadline should perform it. That is a very simple action, which is much better than when the project manager just claims that he will apply some administrative pressure. On getting absorbed in that topic, I read a book, Project Management, in English, and my knowledge of English is not that fluent. And saw a citation there that if we engage the most competent experts and spend a lot of human and financial resources and compile a great schedule, a detailed schedule of the implementation of the project, you will get only 50%. And there is no point in spending that much money on compilation of the schedule just for the sake of having the schedule. So, according to this author of this project management book, the schedule exists just for us to have meetings and to compare what we have done according to the schedule, what we have not. About 10 years ago, I well, about 10 years ago, there was an construction site, a Porsche Center, close to the airport of Boryspil. And there was a contract for some 60,000 euros for designing of the laying of a pipe from this Porsche Center to the suburbs of Boryspil. I was performing a project dealing with refurbishment of all the networks in and grids in Boryspil, but I was asked to deliver the schedule. And I was really frustrated, and I was so much frustrated that I actually refused to perform this contract. That was an amount of money, great amount of money, but the period was 3 weeks, and I was so much afraid of that that I just rejected the offer, rejected the contract. Um, Maybe qualified and competent contractors uh, don't intend to do anything bad, but sometimes you may be afraid of that schedule. So, what I mean is trying to explain that the schedule is not for applying some administrative pressure, like that you were to finish on the 30th day, and if you didn't finish it on the 31st, you will be killed. So, that the schedule exists just for you to be able to follow how the work is being done. Even in school, you do have the schedule. It's possible to follow it.
как в жизни обычно я типа имею отношение к проектированию,
Um,
поэтому расскажу. Проектирование
I will tell you more about design and
есть законодательство
design
по
supervision.
законам архитектурной
We have
деятельности,
legislation about architecture which shows that design supervision is performed by the designer, and we have the copyright for that. In the legislation, we have some procedures, and copyright can be transferred. I mean, if we have one company which was elaborating the design, and for some reason it cannot implement its copyright, then the law has a procedure for that. But in fact, the design supervision must be performed by the person or the company which developed the design. This could be one person, this could be several persons. Like we have projects when we have construction works where we have laying of heat pipeline, other pipelines, and there must be a group of design supervisors, and they either come all together or um, interns. What does the legislation say about the actions of design supervision? All the actions prescribed in the legislation are brought down to one thing, that if there is any deviation traced during the construction, the designer needs to inform the state architectural inspection, architecture and construction inspection. So what I mean is that normally the the designers are obliged to do everything. Like even somebody is trying to make us write protocols of meetings, all the functions. All the functions which they want us to perform are not our functions. The only function is to inform the state architecture and construction inspection. But of course, in real life, not everything is that easy. And tomorrow we're going to discuss some points. But unfortunately, because of low competence, low qualifications, and low quality of project implementation, you will not manage to have any meeting without the presence of the design team because of the quality. Because of the quality either of the documents or because their contractor needs somehow to hide, to conceal his problems, and he organizes kind of external rows, external scandals, that the facility is bad, the site is bad, the design is bad, the customer is bad, and he's trying to distract attention from its own deficiencies and defects. And it often happens when the contractor has suggested the price at the tender minus 30%. Like you have the expected amount 10 million euros, and he says I will do it for 7. And I, as a designer, understand that it's impossible to do that, but he says I will do. You are happy about it. You conclude the contract, and the legislation of Ukraine does not allow to reject his offer. And yes, that is savings of the budget money. And definitely you will have scandals and rows at every weekly meeting. That is sign number one for me. That such scandals will appear. Maybe if you work according to the World Bank rules, if you have a reduced price, they allow you to reject the offer. But with us, unfortunately, that is not the case. Unfortunately. And that's wwhy there arises this sort of situation. The only positive thing is that just need to be ready for that. 99% that you will be faced with such a situation. Um, what other legislation is in place here? I will tell you later, but there is only one document. I think that you will be given the slides, and you may find this resolution on the internet, but this document is about 3 or 5 page long. Um, it writes what site supervision and what design supervision should do. And just contrast it with your ideas because actually there are some differences there. So the legislation says that visiting of the architectural facility is visits to architectural facilities are paid upon request. So site supervisor is the hired employee whom you pay great amounts of money, a highly competent specialist who knows answers to all the questions, and he should be staying on your site on a daily basis. That is a kind of a representative of the master, of the owner. While design supervision is a different thing. If you have questions, you invite them. If not, then not. And even if you compare the payments, so the difference in price in payment for their services is about 20 times. Though in design supervision there may be some 15 people, while in site supervision it's only one person. But one person gets 20 times more because he should perform the work, which I will tell you about after lunch. Um, Maybe I'm telling you such things which are unacceptable for you, but I'm telling it right from the legislation. And if something is not clear, please do ask questions, because I'm just telling you what I think necessary. I'm on the same side of the barricade as you are, and it's better for me to tell you all the bad things now than if I would tell it later. So we have the Code of Ukraine of Administrative Offences and a couple of citations from there. So if the customer does not ensure design supervision, he has to pay a fine up to 1,000 of untaxable minimums of citizens' income, and the minimum is about 4,000. Oh, no, no, sorry. It's 17 hryvnias, so it's up to 17,000 hryvnias. That is a fine which is imposed on an administrative entity which was supposed to ensure design supervision. That is punishable. And all this law, which is rather large, is very sad because it contains only the list of fines and what you should be fined for. It doesn't write how you should do what, but it just enumerates the actions for which you will be fined. Also, it's written there that non-provision or untimely provision of information by the customer about corrections made in the design documents also incurs a fine from 200 to 300 of untaxable citizens' income minimums. Um, I'm trying to explain that there must be a procedure followed, and the procedure is written in the civil code. I mean, the designer has already made a design. He's been paid for that, and that is the only of the customer. That is your apartment. He will not do anything in your apartment, and you should inform the designer what should be done in writing, and you should realize the responsibility which you incur as the result of this law. I mean that you give an illegal instruction or a request or requirement, whatever you call it, to perform some works. You clearly need to understand whether you need to do this or not. And your consultant in this issue is only site supervisor who should know everything rather well.
Also, what is fined? Performance of construction works without permits or declaration about beginning of works. Also, some of the cities before ComDep 1 the departments of constructions didn't know that the sites should be introduced into use, exploitation, and if you do not do it, it is also subject to fine. It means at the end of the construction works, you should follow the procedure of introducing or starting exploitation of the project. In order to do it, you have to invite the commission from the state construction inspection. They check everything, they do a number of procedures and then produce a document. And for example, if you do not plan everything properly, you are going to have some problems. For example, one of the cities from COMDAP 1 stage just included into the tender the works that did not correspond to the projects. So not all the works were included into the technical design. So they built the site, and when they started introducing into exploitation, and then the inspection came and said we are going to cancel the tender, and you have to pay all the funds back because you had some illegal actions. At the beginning, nobody checked, and somehow they managed to regulate the procedure. They used administrative resource, etc. So please be attentive. You should have project documentation, design documents, and at the end there should be an inspection that will check that you follow these documents. And if the technical designer is your neighbor or is your friend, just think that later, in case something goes wrong, you will have to pay a huge fine. So please be very responsible when you deal with these procedures. The second law is the law of Ukraine and it is about responsibility for violating something for the offenses in the field of construction works. The minimum fine is 90 minimum salaries. It is to the technical design. It is about 15,000 euros just for one violation, and there could be seven, for example, found. The minimum fine to the contractor is about 50 minimum salaries, up to 8,000 euros, and the minimum fine to the client, this is the, for example, the department of the municipality, will be 40 minimum salaries. For example, if we talk about responsibility for non-introducing the site into exploitation, it's about 7,000. So, in order to introduce it into use, you have to pay officially 8,000, and the fine is about 7, so fine looks cheaper. There are two special bills, two special laws when the responsible person is fined, and the second document is the law on responsibility for violation. So the person will pay 6,000 and the organization will pay 1.5 million. And believe me, they follow two laws immediately. Not just one of them, but two laws are applied. Only technical supervision is not subject to this particular law. So the law also states the responsibility for providing false information when you try to get the construction permit. For example, you make a mistake introducing some data, and it is immediately it will be fined. For example, you need permit for construction works, and you, for example, indicate site supervision and construction design supervision. You go to the design company, they just give you the paper, etc. For technical supervision, you have to register everything officially. So, for example, in case there is a verification, they understand you do not have the agreement, you have provided not good data, and the fine will be 50 minimum salaries. Believe me, it is done on a mass scale. I do not want to intimidate you, but believe me, apart from your desire to do something, unfortunately in Ukraine we have very tough regulation and very tough legislation. So Belarus is not alone here. We also have some very tough rules. And then let's have some good news. Please have a look at the participants of the implementation project. When you have all types of meetings, you have different stakeholders, representatives of the project, representatives of the client in case. I would like to provide a case. For example, the tender documents should already include who will perform site supervision. For example, when you have chosen your contractor and signed a contract with it, only in that case you should include who is the contractor, who is the site supervisor. So before you sign the contract for construction works, technical supervision cannot exist because you did not start the construction stage. So it is logical. You sign the contract with the contractor. After this, you sign the contract with technical supervision, construction design supervision, and then you get construction permit. But the time has already started. But for example, the contractor cannot do anything physically. So here we have some nuances related to legislation. When, for example, you can declare preparation construction works, for example, fencing the site, but again, you have to prepare some documents for this. So, implementation process participants, you can invite them to your meetings. So this is the client, and the consultants of the client are the services of the client. For example, in Ukraine, the client does not only sign the contract, the client should also perform a number of functions prescribed in the legislation. The consultant of the client is the site supervisor. There is a project team. Also, they have the designer at a certain stage, auditor at a certain stage. The project team also cooperates with technical supervision and some technical experts. For example, if in one of the cities you discuss strategic issues which cannot be settled by the city alone, the support team sends its own technical experts. Sometimes Maxim comes, sometimes Jan comes, in case certain administrative issues should be settled. So in case you have some critical situations, you can use their assistance. So there is support team. We have our own technical consultants, national consultants, local ones. For example, like me, we live in your country, and there are European technical consultants that are responsible for strategic planning, and they also participate in the process. Sometimes they can visit the site, they can verify project documents, so they are responsible for higher level management. So all these people should participate in project implementation. Do not choose just there should be one person from project team and site supervisor and technical designer. No, all people should understand what is happening, what kind of problems exist, and how they can contribute to successful project implementation. The project team has its own structure, you know this structure, and mind that you have your own technical manager. This is a competent person, a qualified person, and this is a person who gets the salary for this. So he's responsible for preliminary design documents, he is involved in the audit process. Definitely he cannot perform everything, but there are certain basic technical things that are part of the scope of competences of this person. This is the way I see the structure of a project team. And probably the heads of the projects should mind that it should not be like that. Why I'm talking about it? For example, when it is necessary to produce design terms of reference, how it is done? The head of the project found a technical expert somewhere in the corridor, and he says, "Could you please write these terms of reference?" And he answers, "Well, I do not have time for it." And he, in his own turn, finds a subordinate and says, "Okay, just write the terms of reference." She says, I cannot do it. How I could do it? Find somewhere in the internet. And then she does it somehow, and as a result, it goes and goes and goes like an avalanche, like a snowball, and as a result, you won't good outcomes out of it. There is a document. Maxim has shown you this document. It is available at the ComDep site, and it is entitled Technical Implementation Manual or Guidelines. Please read it. Just print it out. Read it very attentively. When I saw that document for the first time, when Jan was presenting in during ComDep 1, it was in Mirgorod. I don't remember how many years ago it happened. When I read the document, really my work was much easier. It consists of a number of tables, and each table is devoted to a certain implementation stage. For example, the stage is entitled our project documentation stage, and it says what should be done at this particular stage. You clearly see what kind of substages you have. For example, if you need project documentation, what should be done by project team, and you have your own tasks, what should be done by support team and their tasks, etc. For example, development of project documentation, developing terms of reference for project, procurement of design services, documents, checking and supervision. For example, the designer has produced the document, you have to approve it. Later, you have to calculate the investment expenditure. We are talking about design estimate. Then you approve the project and you update financial analysis, financial calculation. This was what Maxim was talking about. When you develop your documents, you might deviate from the budget. It means you have to convene the steering committee and take some changes. Also, you should take a decision what kind of energy efficient measures will be performed. If you open the table for this point, and if you have, for example, a question of the mayor, how long do you need for the project, for this stage, you won't be able to just answer it exactly. So here you have a number of steps, and if you calculate the steps, you probably will be able to state how long it will take you. Because here, for example, mainly you are involved in this stage. I was talking about it during the first stage of the day, that actually a lot depends on the head of the project in terms of producing project documents. You have chosen a good project team. These are really, for example, you have chosen good design company. This is very nice, but if you do not support them in terms of these stages, you cannot guarantee good results. For example, you probably watched my webinar. I stated there that the design company will not be able to solve all your problems in case you have not followed those stages. For example, to give the task to the design company and to give the deadline of 45 days, and after these 45 days you start asking what is done, it is not enough. You really should organize meetings with the design company. Probably you should consult them. Probably they need some assistance. It's much easier to write in the contract that the design company is responsible for all the conditions and permits. Believe me, they won't be able to do it alone. They will not be able to get some permits, for example, from the mayor, from some departments. Or, for example, in some of the cities, there are problems regarding approving the external look of the facade. It's really prolonged. For example, the case from my practice, the Department of Education says we want it to be gray, the director of the school says we want it to be violet, and the mayor says I would like it to be green. No. And then you are just footballed from each party to another. This is not the task of the technical designer. How the project works is calculated. There are special methodologies prescribed in the legislation how you calculate the cost of the project design. Uh, they are inherited from the Soviet times. There are different types of methodologies. There is the European one. It is based on labor issues. You understand how many days you need, how many people you need, and then you calculate the cost. There is another form, 3B. The calculation is more complicated. There are 75 booklets about the prices for different types of construction works. It includes average cost of all the works. And for example, if there is a kindergarten for 35 kids, you need that amount of money. So there are different types of methodologies. Nobody calculates the budget just out of the blue or just according to your wish. No, you should require from project design companies this calculation, how many workers they need, how many days they need, and how they calculate the design. There is another methodology. It is based on percentage of the construction works. It is introduced for a number of years in Ukraine. And here the basic point is the construction cost. For example, if it is 1 million euro that you need to insulate a school, then probably 4% will be the cost of a design company. If it is just 1%, probably they will not be able to do it. Uh, in case they produce a very low price, probably you were not good enough in terms of explaining to them what you want, how the design company spends their funds. The first point is specifying or terms of reference. Sometimes when you read terms of reference, it's really very difficult to understand. So the design company is trying to understand what the client wants to have. Where is the street where you are going to have the street lighting? What are the recommendations of the energy auditor? So sometimes 60% of time goes to specification of the terms of reference. So the more details you include, the easier it will be for you to get the design. Drawings takes probably 30% of time and cost. Approval of the design with the experts from COPDEP is a painful stage. I remember it myself. Sometimes up to 50% of the whole budget goes to this stage. It takes lots of time, lots of correspondence. Here we need your support because very often you have to write this correspondence in English and mind. Sometimes the translation issue is also important. For example, in order to understand what the expert wants from me, I need 2 weeks and I need 1 day in order to correct it. For example, if you want to understand what the foreign expert wants, just organize a Skype conference. For example, in Suma there are 2 projects, and one designer needed 3 Skypes, and another one needed 25 Skype conferences because he had so many questions. And actually, we tried to specify what the designer should do, both at the stage of project design preparation and at the final stage. And then there is the national expertise stage. Now the expertise are subordinated to oblast administration, and in the majority of regions, they just give positive conclusions. The project is not checked, and as a result, there are a number of mistakes. I am a technical designer myself, and actually, I should be against such expertise, but I think that it is very positive because it means we have another stage that will, when the project will be verified, and the more control we have over our project and our designs, the better. There are regional expertise. We have commercial expertise in Ukraine, but we do all our expertise in the central body for no other inspection to be able to just appeal our things. For example, if we have commercial or regional expertise, sometimes there are cases when they state this is bad, this is wrong, and we are going to file a protocol. And the central expertise is always right because it is really highly qualified expertise. They check and verify complicated projects. They, for example, deal with the projects implemented at the nuclear power stations, and we cooperate only with the central expertise. So please try to use the services of the central expertise and not try to make it quicker, but try to make them be more attentive. Tomorrow I will show you a number of examples. I'm not just making things up. I'm not talking about some fantastic things. Tomorrow you will see the examples and you understand why I stress this point. This is the poster I have in my office, how the project team works. You can use these two slides. Again, these are my posters in my office. This is the indicator of the planned work. Our Belarus colleagues stated, let's do it quicker, and we are going to approve each specific part. It is the red picture, and if we do it correctly, it was the blue picture. That's everything from me.